Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to do a little bit of a shorter video, but we're going to break down how much we spent during our 10-day cruise. So we were actually gone for 12 days. So 2 of those days were spent in New York. That was the port that we left out of on our cruise. And then we had 4 stops in Canada, one of which we could not port because the waters were too rough. So we did not get to port in that one stop. But then we also did Boston, so Boston, Massachusetts, and Maine, Portland, Maine. So this is how much we spent in each of our travel categories for those 10 days, or I guess 12 days. So on food and drinks, we spent $259. So we did eat on, I think, almost every port we stopped at. One of the ports in Canada we did not eat. So we had poutine in the first port was Halifax, and we had a lobster roll at Peggy's Cove. And Peggy's Cove was beautiful, by the way. That was one of the only ports that we actually did an excursion through the cruise ship. So that was paid in advance, so that is not in this total here. And then we had poutine on, the name is escaping me, but one of the other ports in Canada. And then when we were in Maine, we had some chowder, and also my husband got a lobster grilled cheese there. And when we were in Boston, for the longest time. That was the longest port. So we actually ended up getting a cannoli in Boston from like the Little Italy area. So we did the Freedom Trail, and it brings you up to like this beautiful old, like there's a lot of old buildings there. It's like a historical area. And there's like a lot of Italian, like very old Italian delis and bakeries. And so we ended up getting a cannoli. And we also had lunch in Boston. So we spent $259. For entertainment, we spent $143. So we did like a little railroad ride along the coast in Maine. And that was very beautiful. And it just took you up to like where the harbor is, where they put the ships. And then we also did, so a lot of our entertainment is actually, so we spent $342 in ride shares, and that's because when we were in Boston, we just took ride share to downtown Boston. We walked along the Freedom Trail, and then we took a ride share to like their little Chinatown area that they have there. And we walked around there, and then we walked around the shopping district. And then when we were in New York as well, we took ride shares in New York. One to get from the airport to our hotel on the first night, and then one to get from the hotel to the port where we had to board the ship. And then we had to take another Uber ride from the port when we got in to Manhattan, where we stayed until we flew home. So we did like a day room. So we had the hotel for 8 hours because our flight was not until 11 o'clock at night. And we had to be off the ship by 10 a.m. So that is what we decided to do, was just rent a hotel for like half a day. And then we explored New York for a while our bags were in the room. And then we came back and took a quick nap before our flight. So, and then we also Ubered from our house to the airport, and then back from the airport to our house. So a big chunk of what we spent was on ride shares. Shopping, we spent only $20, so we didn't do a lot of shopping. That was on my allergy medicine. I totally forgot to pack it, so I ended up buying some at Walgreens in New York the first day. So travel, that is that day room, the hotel. So $117. We spent $47 on souvenirs. So I got a little stuffed lobster, which I will put in a picture. And then also I bought a band for the Princess Cruises to put my medallion into, because I don't like wearing like the long lanyard. Was not something that I was comfortable wearing. So I got like a little wristband that you could put it in. So that was that. And then for unexpected, we actually ended up, our bag was overweight, which we didn't realize until we were like the day we had to leave for the airport. So we ended up actually buying another suitcase and then paying for another suitcase. So we ended up spending $200 buying the suitcase and then paying for the suitcase to bring onto the plane. And then the extra $81 was that we upgraded on the flight home because it was so late. We upgraded to front seats. So like, I guess Frontier doesn't really consider them first class, but they're like upgraded reserved seats, and they have a little more leg room. They're a little more spacious and comfortable. So we spent $81 on that. So the total that we spent was $1,210. But we had also spent, if you watched my wallet and stuffing video, we had also spent some money before the trip. I had bought a purse. We had to buy a little carry-on suitcase because my other one just totally broke. And then, some toiletry items as well. And so with that included, we spent $1,448. That does not include what we spent on the port fees and taxes, or the room, the cabin on the cruise, or also our drink package. So we did end up buying the drink package, the upgraded drink package that included the photos, so like the professional photos that are around the ship, those were included for like, you get to download them digitally and you can take as many as you want. I feel like there was one other thing. Oh, unlimited dining. So you can dine unlimitedly in like the steakhouse or the Italian restaurant, any of the premium dining options, which you would typically pay per visit if you don't have that package. So this total, the $1,448, doesn't include those things, which was the bulk of what we spent on the trip, but that was already paid for a few months back. So just for what we spent the week before the trip and then what we spent on the actual trip was the $1,448. So couple tips that I have for if you are traveling and you're trying to save a little bit of money. Obviously our biggest expense was the ride shares, and that was just because the airport to the port was kind of far, and then our house to the airport is kind of far. So all of those trips were around $60 each way. So that was the big bulk of it. And then we took the little Ubers in Boston, and I think just in Boston. We didn't really take any around New York. We just walked around New York when we were sightseeing there. The other thing was that we didn't buy a whole lot of souvenirs because we had so much stuff that we had packed. We didn't feel like we had a lot of room, for one. And for two, we really didn't need, to buy anything to remember the trip. We had a bunch of photos and, just the memories is enough. And then I always plan for unexpected because you never know what's going to come up, like our bag being overweight and us having, which we could have paid, like a fee for the bag being overweight, but it was like almost as much as just getting another suitcase and checking it. So that is why we made the decision to do that. And then for our food and drinks, that does include the 2 meals that we had in New York on the last day. So when we got off the boat, we got lunch in New York, and then before we flew home, we ended up getting dinner in New York as well. That also includes a meal that we had at the airport before we flew the first day. So overall, I feel like we did not spend too much. We saved ourselves quite a bit by doing our entertainment by ourselves, so kind of not doing the ship excursions. We only did the one ship excursion to Peggy's Cove, and that's because that location was an hour from the port, so it wasn't really any cheaper to do a ride share and do it on ourselves, like by ourselves. And then, but in Boston, by walking the Freedom Trail by ourselves, by not doing like a guided tour, we saved quite a bit of money because they wanted a lot of money to do either a bus tour or like a guided walking tour of the Freedom Trail. And then also in Maine, when we did the train ride, we also did that just exclusively through the company that offers it. You could have done like an independent tour around Maine in like a tour bus through the cruise ship, but we just decided to walk around the cities, and the same with the 2 other stops that we had in Canada. We just chose to walk around the ports and see things ourselves and do our own tour of the town instead of doing one through the cruise ship. So those are just a few tips of how you can save some money when you're traveling. Now, when we've traveled to places like Honduras or Belize, where maybe there's not a lot on the port and maybe there's not as much access to like ride share or public transportation like right there, then we have before done the excursions through the cruise ship, but it is going to cost you more. So that is something to consider. But because this was all Canada and the States, it was really easy and convenient to just find separate transportation and do things on our own. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a little long-winded, but I did want to kind of make an update and let you guys know exactly how much we spent on the cruise, because our spending this month is going to look pretty high when I do like my monthly closeout on how much we spent for the whole month. But that's just because of our traveling and also us getting the new car. So we put that $2,000 down payment on that new car. So our end of the month spending is going to look quite high and very different from like an average month, I guess you could say. But thank you again for watching the video. I hope you all have a blessed day and stay lucky. Bye-bye.